Welcome to episode 222 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench podcast network, presented by WolfSpreads. He's Tom Albano. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network, right in the 680 range, subscriber-wise. Go there, like, and subscribe as well. Make sure you follow our website, etbpodcast.com, for all the latest blogs, information. We just brought on a writer or two starting to write some NFL stuff. We will have some Combine blogs coming up very soon as well. If we didn't have such a stacked episode, maybe we would have done the Combine, but we have a large episode. Also, like I said, presented by WolfSpreads. Make sure you go check them out as well. You know the drill from our Football Fridays. 2,000 fantasy dollars. We were all in a competition. I think at our peak it was like 7 or 8 people, right? Like we had a lot of people. You bet on the games, the over under, the spreads, the money line. There's plenty of that. You don't have to use real money. It's a beginner's app to learn how to gamble. That way you don't have to lose your house in the process.
It's also good for basically competitive fantasy gambling, that you're not risking money, but you're actually going head to head with people.
Right. And like you don't have to be like, oh, well, you took my money. Well, you don't have to say that because it's not real money.
Right.
So
also, and it doesn't matter if you're a fan of the NFL, MLB, NBA, college sports, NHL. They've got it all.
Yeah. So check out WolfSpreads. We'll be back when the NFL season comes back. We'll be back in full force with them. We're also going to do NBA, MLB, some other sports. Hopefully UFC down the line would be nice. So go check out WolfSpreads. All right. Massive. Well, let me make the joke because I have to do it again for about the 10 millionth time. We were going to lead with baseball.
And we still have plenty of baseball that we're going to talk about.
But unfortunately, the show got hijacked. Again.
Yeah, the show got hijacked. It's about the NFL, and it's a story that hits kind of close to home because it does involve a local team, including the team of one person to my left here. So, Nick, I think we should just...
RELAX.
Well, we'll get to that. So that was a hijack.
Mhm.
Also, there's some other stuff involved with the Jets. If we have time, we'll get to that. The Jets are a mess. We'll get to that. Baseball. Yes, baseball season is what? About a month away?
Right. We are actually... So, today is Leap Day. Yes, we actually managed to have a show on Leap Day, which is incredible. But we're obviously recording it the night before, so it's the 28th. So from the time we're recording this, it's 1 month. Actually, I think on the day that this is airing, Leap Day, it's 30 days to the MLB opening day. We finally have a Scott Boras client that has signed. It's one Cody Bellinger.
That's not the one I bet everyone was expecting you to say, though.
Yeah, I know people are expecting Blake Snell, but at least as of the time we're recording, still in negotiations. Scott Boras has opened his mouth about teams regressing their payrolls. A lot of debate also from the MLBPA about this 2-second cut to the pitch clock. That's that little change that's been made.
Great.
And NBA stuff. You got Steve Kerr re-signing with the Golden State Warriors, 2-year, $35 million extension. Knicks involved in yet
Uh-oh. Yeah, you froze for a second.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. So pick up with I don't know, you want to just pick up your NBA stuff again? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Tom?
The hell
So,
happened? You froze on my end.
yeah, you were frozen too. All right. I see you now.
All right. I'll just restart the NBA stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Over on the NBA side of things, Steve Kerr getting an extension rather from the Golden State Warriors, 2 years, $35 million. The Knicks involved in yet another controversial call, but this time benefiting from it. Then we got some NFL stuff that we will talk about that's not Jets related. That is the big market of running backs that's going to be expected for the free agency when that starts up in 2-3 weeks' time. Tyreek Hill is now being sued again. Raiders saying the Raiders and Vikings not trading their star wide receivers, and Eric Bieniemy's new position, a little bit shocking.
Yeah, I mean, no one expected him to go back to college. We'll explain that. Also, if the Jets situation wasn't bad enough, the Jets are leaving ESPN New York to go to a station that no one thought of.
Well,
Well, in New York, you'll know it.
I was
But
gonna say New York they would know, but also just because it is something that needs to be said, it is not the Jets' fault technically. This is something related to ESPN Radio, which unfortunately we've talked about ad nauseum about how ESPN seems to be ditching radio to focus on the digital side, and now the Jets are basically paying the price for it, as are technically the Knicks and Rangers.
well, the Knicks and Rangers are staying, which I found
Right.
a little
But
bizarre.
that's why I said they're paying the price for it too.
Right. And then I'll leave the last story to surprise because when you find out what my opinion is on this story, you will be surprised. That there's your tease for the episode right there.
All right, let's jump into Jets land because we got a lot of topics that we got to
Well,
get through.
first of all, yes.
So the lead story here is that Zach Wilson has been given permission to seek a trade, according to General Manager Joe Douglas. According to Ari Myrov, Douglas basically contacted Wilson's agent and told Wilson's agent, "You have full permission to seek a trade." It does not seem to be that Wilson requested it. It's that Douglas initiated the contact, which to me is code for if you don't find a trade partner in 2-3 weeks' time, even if it's something like I think they got what a fifth and a seventh or something for Sam Darnold a couple of years ago. Or I think it was the year they drafted Wilson when
Which
that
was
happened.
also a bust.
Right. It's
Um,
basically even if for as you would put it, a bucket of footballs. Find a trade partner or at the start of the league year, he's getting caught.
I mean, I did a video on this when the news broke, and I said, "What is Zach Wilson's worth? There is no worth. He has not won very many games, but and people are gonna say, but Nick, you have to give him some slack because he had to come in for Aaron Rodgers." And I'm like, no, he gets no slack. He was supposed to be the starter. The reason they had to go after Aaron Rodgers is because Zach Wilson failed.
At the same time, I don't think you can look at a 7-10, record coming in off of, like you weren't expected to be the starter and you ended up being the starter for a good chunk of the season. Now he did have his struggles, which is why he didn't play every single game. At the same time, I think the Jets landed in a better position that they should have been in. At the same time, if there is one glaring weakness for the Jets, that is at the quarterback position. Now, I say that because on one hand, Aaron Rodgers is older, so he's a short-term solution. On the other hand, we haven't really seen anything of the Jets under Aaron Rodgers. We saw 4 plays last season of the Jets under Aaron Rodgers. So, and I think the expectation, Nick, was that regardless if Wilson stayed or not, and it was probably more logical that it wasn't going to happen based on this, the Jets need to go after an offseason. I mean, a backup quarterback in the offseason.
But here's the problem. So, do they go after one of the guys who is a little more veteran-ish to be on the roster? Like, I don't think it would ever happen, but like, is a Kirk Cousins attractive to the Jets? Like, I don't know. Is Derek
I don't
Carr
know.
a guy that's attractive to the Jets originally?
Originally, the idea was out there before Rodgers came into play. Um, you just need to have somebody because let's face it, 7-10 record. They've played themselves probably out of most of the top quarterbacks within this draft class. So you're not going to get somebody this year. You just have to
Well,
hope that
let's be real. They won too many games.
right. Well, I said you just have to hope that Rodgers may can play well this season to the point where it goes back to your old expectations that you had for the Jets this past offseason of 10 wins and a 10 wins and a playoff spot. Um, but maybe this is also the scenario where maybe you gotta hope he plays 2 more years, only because I'm not the biggest college football person outside of the incoming class, Nick. So I don't really know of the quarterback class of 25 and what people are saying about it. It might
Right.
even just be a little early to tell because we're trying to focus on this year's class.
The quarterback class for this year is not great by any means either.
But it is plentiful.
Agreed. You have Caleb Williams, who obviously is going to be number one. Then you have guys like Penix and McCarthy, which McCarthy's getting downgraded a bunch. Like, I don't know where he's going to end up, but the Jets, I don't think they were in for, like, they don't want to start over again. Right. And unfortunately, okay.
But I think what this season showed was that if you really don't believe in Zach Wilson, and this report says much, then you need somebody there because you can't exactly count on Rodgers' health. So you need a legitimate option. You even openly questioned last season that if they had re-signed Mike White to be their backup, would the Jets would they have had won 1 or 2 more games?
I would say it's possible. I don't know if it would have happened, obviously, but here's the other issue, and unfortunately, I have to play Killjoy a little bit here. What happens if Aaron Rodgers does the same thing he did at the beginning of this past season? And he goes 4 plays, and he gets sat on by a fridge of a defensive end, and that ends his season. And Wilson, who was the only backup, is gone.
Well, I'll be very brutally honest with you, Nick, and I say brutally honest, but you probably know it in your head as I do. If Aaron Rodgers gets another one of those injuries, that's not his season. That's his career.
Oh, in my opinion, his career should be over. That's my opinion, actually. Like, he should go away from the football field. You don't care about football anymore. That's my opinion about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers wants to go smoke that weird stuff, the ayahuasca stuff. He wants to go in a room of darkness for 72 hours, where basically he gets his meals fed to him like he's in a jail cell. And that's it.
What you want to continue on? He wants to be in a place where he's immunized from the world. He doesn't have to deal with any COVID. So maybe he has another witch girlfriend or something.
Yeah,
like that.
No, you're all correct on this. Like, I'm you and I are like lockstep here. Like that. Aaron Rodgers is a mess. I wouldn't want him back, but of course, because the NFL has big name syndrome,
well,
they won't get rid of him.
Nick, it's also a matter of that you paid him all of that. You got to try out there.
Well, it was really the Packers who paid him that, and then they took the money on. The Jets, to be honest, they could have held out for more because the leverage was really more in the Jets' corner, not the Aaron Rodgers corner. They were in a bind because they wanted Jordan Love. They already made that clear. So they had to trade Aaron at that point in time.
You also remember he openly spoke about it on the Pat McAfee show before a trade could officially be done.
Oh, man. Pat McAfee must be hitting himself after the season, the amount of times.
That said, Nick, I do feel a little bad for Zach Wilson, only because of the other part of this story that we haven't gone over.
Well, before we do that, the one thing to summarize this would be By the way, shout out Richard Lewis, who just passed away from that was on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I wanted to do that. But
there is another side to the story which makes me feel a little bad for Zach Wilson. So around the same time that this report comes out, another report comes out. So Mecole Hardman, I gave all the teasing, of course it's the former Jet. They got him and then they traded him back to the Chiefs all for nothing. Well, it turns out there was reasoning for such. And reports state around the same time that this Zach Wilson story came out, apparently the reason Mecole Hardman did not get much action, and ended up getting traded back to Kansas City for little to nothing, is because in retaliation to him getting little playing time and him not being up on the wide receiver chart, he apparently openly talked about some of the playbook to the Jets opponents.
well, let's go to the evidence, which we were talking about before the show. Connor Hughes, which by the way, probably one of the more respected Jets insiders, in my opinion, has gotten, by the way, in an aggressive locker room where people don't want to speak to the media. He manages to get quotes, even anonymous quotes from players. So he wrote, yes, I'm told there was validated belief from the Jets that wide receiver Mecole Hardman, frustrated by his lack of usage, leaked game plans to the opposition, as implied by several players, Sauce Gardner and Kenny Yeboah. Not just the Eagles game, which, if you remember, they did win,
Mm-hmm.
but also the Chiefs game, which, if you remember, they almost won.
Yep.
Or did they win that? I can't remember now.
Chiefs, no, the Chiefs won.
But it was close. It was a close all game.
Closer than I expected, at least.
And then he goes on to say, ironically, the Eagles' victory was arguably the best of the season for the Jets, while Zach Wilson enjoyed the best game of his career against the Chiefs. Go figure, right? I mean,
but this is where I kind of feel bad. Like I mentioned, under extraordinary circumstances, Zach Wilson had to be the starter again. Obviously, there was a lot of drama with that, but still, Jets go 7-10. And you feel kind of bad because, I mean, Nick, obviously he's not the one who leaked the playbook, but really there's going to be of little consequence for Mecole Hardman. Now, will he get suspended? I don't know, because you could equivalent this to the sign stealing in baseball, but you could also say that is leaking team information. But regardless, let's imagine, Nick, he only gets suspended 4 games, 6 games.
That seems to be the standard, 4 to 6 games.
But Nick, honestly, even if he was suspended for the if he was suspended for a long-term suspension, probably not the whole season.
He doesn't care. He won a Super Bowl.
Right. He won a Super Bowl. He's gonna get money. Probably not as much money, but he's still going to get money.
He'll get more because he was on the back-to-back title teams.
So this is of no consequence. Zach Wilson, though, his days as a starter in the NFL are probably done for.
Oh no, they're over. Let's just say that now. They're over.
So I feel bad, but at the same time, given that the playbook got out and Zach Wilson's previous reputation with the Jets, Nick, at that point, this officially cooks his goose that they have to move on.
Yeah, but and I think I was putting an equivalent to it before that, like in baseball, when there's sign stealing, like there's only so much you can do. Now, baseball tried to step in with the pitch comm and the catcher having the thing on his leg pad and everything. You're telling me people can't steal signs still? Like, come on. It's part of the game. It's part of professional sports. If you figure out the strategy or whatever the gameplay, you have an advantage. It's like any other advantage. Home field advantage. You have the better pitcher. You have your ace going. It's like any other advantage.
So at this point, the Jets are going to have to seek a realistic backup quarterback option, and they just got to pray at this point that Aaron Rodgers is healthy enough to go for 2024. And as far as a Zach Wilson trade, I mean, you got to pray somebody's willing to offer up a 6th or a 7th round pick.
I mean, he's worth a bucket of footballs. I'm going to keep saying that. Like, he's not worth. Why would a team? Let's try this. You're a GM of not like a major team, like some Joe Schmo, like the bottom half, bottom 16 teams, 17
All right,
teams.
let's say Arizona.
All right. Well, okay. That's
Okay,
more.
I know that's a different kind of situation with Kyler and such.
Yeah. I don't know, like a
New England.
Minnesota or Minnesota. Okay, fine. New England. We'll go with New England.
I know that's a little unrealistic given that division rivals, but for the sake of bottom of the barrel, let's say New England, or you could say Washington. That might be more realistic.
Well, let's go with New England because they're kind of in a between
They need a
scenario.
quarterback.
So if I'm putting you in the spot of the GM of the Patriots and I don't know if the Jets would ever trade with the Patriots. That's a whole nother issue too.
Mm-hmm.
But they say, all right, we're willing to take whatever for Zach Wilson. Give us a 5 and a 7, or a 5, a 7, and a conditional pick. If you're the Pats, are you turning around to the Jets and saying
one pick? I'm giving you one pick.
And you wouldn't be wrong.
Maybe the 6th and the 7th, but the 6th and the 7th is probably all that I would get. Now they did get. I want to double check information that what they got for the Sam Darnold trade in 2021 before they drafted Wilson.
I'm looking at it now. So the Jets received 3 picks: a 6th rounder in 2021, and a 2nd rounder and 4th rounder in 2022.
I forgot about that 2nd round pick.
So they ended up getting a value pick.
So, given that, maybe a 5th and a 7th isn't exactly far fetched.
I think that's probably your high watermark.
I could see that,
but you're not going to get anything for him. If the Jets are going to play stupid and they're just going to say, "All right, we're going to wait for the best offer," they're going to be waiting.
Yeah, you're not going to get value. I mean, let me correct myself. You're going to get the picks, Nick, where you're hoping to find the diamond in the rough.
Well, like Brock Purdy,
Tom Brady, Antonio Brown,
which is probably 1 in a billion, to be honest.
It happens though.
No, I'm not disagreeing, but those happening are diamond in the rough, as you said. It's not a good situation, and later we'll talk about the media side of their horrible situation.
All right, let's go on to the story that should have been the top story this week. Before that, Cody Bellinger re-signing with the Cubs. He is going back to Chicago after all, and it's going to be a 3-year, $80 million deal that involves 2 opt-outs. So I believe how it works is it's 30 million. Is it 30 million, 30 million, 20 million?
I think it was like 36, 26, 25. I thought I was reading, but
but it's going to be after the first season. So the first season's 30 million. After that, he can
opt out for both.
And then after the 2nd year, he can opt out as well. And then the 3rd year is obviously the end of the contract.
It's very popular as of late, the past couple of years, to do like a 3-year deal with 2 opt-outs. But it's dangerous too, because if the guy has an unbelievable year, you're screwed.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you can kind of be screwed in more than one way. If you're the Cubs, Nick, here's the situation you're in now. If Cody Bellinger goes off, obviously then he's going to opt out if he has another season like he did in 2023, and he can be a free agent all over again. If he regresses back to the state that he was in 20 and 21 with the Dodgers, then you're paying $30 million. Now, if it is a front-loaded contract, then at the very least he's not going to be he's not going to be paid as much. But this I would equivalent, Nick, to where I can give the Cubs say this is fine, this is a fair deal. I can equivalent this to Giancarlo Stanton's situation with the Yankees. Now, I'm not talking about in the before. I'm talking about the now. Because what have I talked about, Nick, with Stanton, that if he sucks this year, then if you're the Yankees, you can just cut him and you'll have to eat 25, but 26 through 28, some of that money is going to be taken on by the Marlins. So it's not going to hurt you as much. And in this kind of deal, Nick, it's only 3 years. So it's not a very long-term deal. So it's not going to really hurt the Cubs so much, especially if it is a front-loaded deal, like you said.
Right. And the way I look at this is, again, this is Scott Boras, or blame Scott Boras syndrome.
Nick, Scott Boras is the biggest loser in all of this.
Well, I don't know if I would say he's the biggest loser. Would I say that he's caused a lot of the problems? Yes.
Yes, Bellinger expected to get $250 to $300 million.
That was never going to happen. Never. He overvalued all his guys.
And now they're paying the price for it.
I mean, would you give Bellinger 10 years, 250, 10 years, 300? Hell no, I wouldn't.
No.
The problem is Scott Boras is only looking one direction, and that's up. And unfortunately, his guys are paying for it. Look at Blake Snell. I mean,
still out there on the market.
Blake Snell wanted 9 years, 270, and we all scoffed at that right away.
And the Yankees were willing to do the AAV, but they weren't willing to do the years. They were doing 6 years, like 150. And now
2 offers from the Yankees.
Right. And now at this point, they said, and now at least this is what I've heard thrown around the Yankee rumor mill. Oh, we'll up your AAV now, but now we're going to decrease the years again. Now it's only going to be something like a 3-year 105 or 3-year 110.
Right. And in my opinion, if I'm the Yankees, I would say no mas and move on, because
the way I look at it, and the way the Yankees are behaving, Nick, it seems like that deal is out there, and it's like, if you take it, fine. If you don't take it, we move on.
I mean, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but that's why they got Marcus Stroman, because they knew that Blake Snell and Scott Boras were going to play a bad game of freeze tag.
And if you're the Yankees, it's win-win. If you don't, if Snell doesn't take the offer, oh well, you got Marcus Stroman. You can focus on your season. You don't let this be a distraction. And then if he does sign, then for 2024, at least you have Garrett Cole, Marcus Stroman, and Blake Snell. The first and latter of which were the defending Cy Young champions. And that's an incredible 1, 2, 3.
Well, here's the other issue, which people don't realize when it comes to the salary tax threshold.
Mm-hmm.
The Yankees and even the Mets and Mets are already at the 110 number, which means anything that they sign essentially doubles against their payroll. So if they give $35 million a year to Blake Snell, it essentially becomes $70 million a year. So is that investment worth it? No, of course not.
At the same time, I think the Yankees, Nick, are showing a little bit like they have a price for a player and they're not going to go above that price. But if it's something like they can get Snell for the price they want, which supposedly is going to be the $35 million for 3 years, if they're willing to get that, then they'll be willing to sacrifice a little bit, especially after the last season that they've had.
Well, what's finally happening, and it took the Yankees long enough to finally realize it, the Yankees are finally saying, hey, Scott, take your offers and shove it up your you-know-what. We finally learned our lesson that we're not going to overpay for your guys. Like, we'll spend, but we're not going to be drunken sailors like George used to be when he was the owner.
Well, Nick, I think it's not just I think it's everybody. You mentioned it last week. Everybody has caught up to Scott Boras. That nobody is willing to play Boras's game anymore.
It took long enough.
And funny enough that I say that. So Scott Boras, after after Bellinger signed, was interviewed, and he mentioned how MLB teams are choosing to regress. Regress is the word that he mentioned. Uh, their payrolls, still bringing
It's
the
the wrong
article up.
word, by the way, but whatever he wants to say.
Oh, he said regress. So this is an interview actually he did with former Unspoken Podcast guest Bob Nightingale, USA Today.
God. Okay, this should be interesting, but
Here's the quote. Clubs have plenty of money to spend, but they're not spending in a manner that is customary to competitiveness. It's not that they don't have the ability to pay, but their choice is to regress on their payrolls. When you have players like this who are available, they can dramatically impact the outcome and goals of teams. It's like the trade deadline in July. You can absolutely change the culture in the clubhouse by adding one of these players. And he added, by the way, we're open to all sorts of ideas, short-term, long-term flex. I can tell you these players are not seeking anything beyond what the existing industry standards are. Yeah, because offering Cody Bellinger $250 to $300 million after having a rebound season after 2 or 3 seasons of crap that the Dodgers basically you said go away. Yeah, that's standards. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Scott.
You need to shut the fuck up.
Because, Scott, if that was the case, and you're saying that teams are regressing, why aren't you getting the teams to sign the deals that you want if you're saying they're regressing? I mean, Scott sometimes talks out of the left side of his ass instead of out of his mouth, and it gets him in trouble. Look what happened to, and this is not the best example, but look what happened to Michael Conforto with the Mets. Remember, like, he was putting Conforto out there for $100 million. Conforto was not $100 million player at all. And what happened to Conforto? He signed like a 1-year or 2-year deal with the Giants.
Yeah.
And then his career ended.
And if you're going to point to how the market of free agents got all screwed up thanks to the Dodgers and what they did with Ohtani Yamamoto, I say once, I say 1,000 times. You said once 1,000 times. Outlier.
Oh, it's by far, it's not just an outlier. It's the biggest outlier in the history of professional sports. Because the only sports or athletes I can think of with that money are, and it's not sports we cover, David Beckham, Messi, in soccer.
Yeah.
Like guys that get ridiculous sums of money, like 500 million, 700 million, $1 billion, like in soccer, because the marketing of soccer is international, like fully international, not fake international like Major League Baseball does. So for Scott to say that payrolls are regressing, no, Scott, you don't want to admit that you are overvaluing your guys. And baseball, with all the analytics junkies or clowns, as I like to refer to them, they're actually doing their job and telling the ownership group, hey, if you spend this money, we're fucked for the next 10 years if it doesn't work. That's what's happening.
Yeah, the baseball teams are being smart. That's what it is at this point.
Who is the third baseman out of Toronto? He's the other one that's a Boras client.
Chapman.
Chapman's another one who's way, way, way overvalued. Like, great player. Great power hitter.
I was going to say, which is sad because there should be teams out there who need to be interested in a corner infielder like Chapman is. And it makes me question, Nick, what's going to happen next offseason when Alonso goes on the market?
Well, it's interesting you say that. So, Alonso signed with Boras this offseason. And Boras is already throwing out a number that's never been heard of for the first base position at $40 million a year, which I'll tell you right now, and I'm looking at this camera and you're listening to this audio, if the Mets pay $40 million, they are the dumbest franchise in the history of baseball. I mean,
you know what, Nick? I'm going to top you on that one. I think they already are the dumbest franchise by allowing him to go to free agency in the first place.
Well, that was the quote from last week with David Starnes, the Milwaukee GM that became the new GM of the Mets, basically say, hey, you know what? He can go test free agency And when he's ready to come back, which might not happen, because you're going to get, excuse me,
I'm just surprised after all the panic you saw in the 22-23 offseason across town when we weren't certain as Yankee fans if Aaron Judge was going to be coming back, that you wouldn't have wanted to hop on the Pete Alonso train right then and there.
Well, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, but you're going to get some idiot team that's going to say, I have a hole, I'm burning a hole in my pocket, money burning a hole in my pocket, saying, all right, Pete, the Mets are not going to pay you, but come play with us. We'll pay you $300 million, stupidly.
I'm wondering, Nick, if there's going to be anybody who leaves Boras for the sake of what's happened here.
No, because he gets money. That's what he does. The one team I will throw out there, even though it's kind of illogical, Toronto. Because obviously they have Vladdy Jr. at base, but I could see him being a DH.
But I was going to say, at this point, Nick, Toronto is trying to be a big player, trying to finally get over the hump of, that they should be playing in the ALCS. They should be playing in the World Series with the young talent that they have, that they're going to always be in the conversation now for bigger talents out there.
I would even go as far to say, because the Mets are going to have to trade him at the deadline. They're not going to compete for a playoff spot this year. They're projected to win 82, 83 games, which is going to be a dud compared to they have Atlanta and Philly in that division.
In other words, it's not as high stakes as the Ohtani situation, but it is still the Ohtani situation. It's like even though he's a rental, you can still get a couple of good pieces for him for a team that needs a power hitting first baseman to go over the top.
I mean, the Mets need to learn from the Angels situation and say, all right, they had the golden lottery ticket of all time to trade, which, by the way, all other 29 teams, would have jumped in line for the most part to make that deal. And they would have depleted their farm system for that guy. Now, in my opinion, Toronto should be the first one on that list trying to make a deal, even if it's a rental. Because imagine that they would have Vladdy and Pete Alonso in that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
That would almost be unfair. Bo Bichette, who's the other son? Calvin Biggio.
Yeah.
That team is great. They just have an issue when it comes to the playoffs, which they need to get over. But I don't know. Scott has rubbed people the wrong way for many years. But Scott Boras is a what? An agent. And what are agents? They're sleazy people.
They like the money.
There's one last point I'll make on this is, I think I told you about this before. There was a great CNBC documentary on Scott Boras. Mm-hmm. And not the full process, because obviously he's not going to reveal everything. But they were showing, I mean, you know this already, like he has his own facilities for his players. During COVID, I think his facilities got used more than normal facilities. Because they weren't barred. Well, they weren't barred by the MLBPA. They couldn't go to camps. But he gets 4% of every contract that he gets signed. Not every year. 4% up front of every deal that is signed on the dotted line. Remember the Barry Zito deal with the Giants?
Right.
I think it was at the time, I think it was like $170 million, which was a lot of money, by the way.
It was one of the bigger contracts for a pitcher.
4%, right there, off the top, which was like, I want to say it's, I can't do the exact math, but I think it's like 20 or 25 million or something.
And you have to consider all the players that he has, especially star players.
Right. And that's why Boras has gotten the reputation, because every star is there. But now guys are going to have to rethink this, because if he's going to be too aggressive, I might not have a job in Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm. All right. One other baseball story. The MLBPA, or should I say Tony Clark, not exactly happy. So obviously baseball, I think we talked about it, 2-second cut to the pitch clock. with runners on base. So last year it was 20 seconds. This year it's going to be 18. It's still going to be 15 seconds for no runners on base. And he said, well, that's a little too quick for some of the pitchers.
You need to shut the fuck up.
Like, I'm getting tired of the MLBPA. Like,
you know what? I'm getting tired, Nick. Like the pitch clock, and I admitted it at the end of last season. I was perfectly okay with the pitch clock.
I came around to it finally, too.
Yes. But now we're getting to the point where we're arguing over seconds. Like
2
of a
seconds.
baseball game. We're arguing over two. Well, let's be real. Let's be real. How many batters would come up overall? But let's just say.
Let's say you had an extra 2 seconds for every 27 batters if it was a perfect game. 54 seconds.
And I think in a full game, a typical average game would be maybe 70 batters, 80 at bats, something like that.
So 140 seconds? Is that what we're talking about here?
We're really arguing over this.
We're talking about a minute and 20. Is it a minute? No, it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Is that right?
I am so, regardless of what it is, Nick, it's so minuscule. I'm so sick of MLB and MLBPA doing all of this argument over, trying to shorten the game. And now we're getting to the point where 2 minutes all of a sudden matters.
2 seconds. But yeah. Again, Tony Clark.
You need to shut the fuck up.
Because Tony Clark, and this might be strong, and if it is, tell me. Tony Clark is ruining the sport of baseball.
I wouldn't say he's ruining the sport of baseball. Rob Manfred also has been doing, obviously, we've had...
I'm talking about from the player's perspective, representing the players.
Well, I don't know if I would say he's ruining the game, but I'm not a fan of him as the Players Association leader.
I mean, I'm trying to remember who the player heads were when we were younger. I think Selena Roberts was one of them.
But the thing is, Nick, even MLB and the MLBPA just have never had.
They don't agree on shit. They don't. I don't agree.
It's one of the more toxic league player association relationships in the 4 North American sports. I know people are going to say NHL is number 1 because they actually lost a whole season in 04 and 05, and I get that, and I give that credit. But I think in modern day times, I think it's MLB and MLBPA is number 1.
I agree, because at least the NHL has come around with a zero tolerance policy for some of the stuff that goes down.
At least the NHL and the NHLPA, we haven't really seen as much fighting. And now we got to the point, Nick, where NHL players are going to be allowed in the Olympics again. So progress is being made, at least from my standpoint. But as somebody who has watched baseball since basically the day where they were born, it has just been constant bicker, clash between losing 94 World Series, almost going on strike, and I think it was 02 or 03, COVID, almost losing some of the 2022, if not all of the 2022 season. Like, it has just been back and forth, and it is just frustrating and aggravating with these two sides.
You're forgetting also, we talked about it, I think last week. In lieu of all this bullshit that's been going on, Rob Manfred decided to announce that he's retiring in 5 years.
We'll see. We'll see if anything changes in 5 years' time. We'll see if anything actually changes in a baseball world that doesn't have Rob Manfred or Tony Clark. I just, Nick, at this point, highly doubt it.
I want to know if secretly, when the players heard that announcement, did they go into a private locker room and cheer and throw a party? So I'd be curious to see if that happened.
All right, let's go over to your world now. Let's do a couple of basketball stories. Steve Kerr is going to get a 2-year, $35 million extension with the Golden State Warriors. Now, Nick, the Warriors obviously won the NBA title a couple of seasons ago, but I see this extension. I see where the Warriors are right now. A little older and, maybe not of the dynasty that they were. I wonder, Nick, is this basically, this 2-year extension, is this the last hurrah?
The last hurrah happened already. Their team is bad. Like, and I didn't think I was going to say that, but like, I know they won a title 2 years ago. It was kind of a fluky title, to be honest, because they weren't even a top seed. They were like, if I'm not mistaken, they were like a 5 or a 6 seed.
I wouldn't say fluky though. I mean, they still had the talent that they had.
Steph Curry was injured all season.
Well, this is the point I was going at, Nick. And I think we've talked about this previously, that when a dynasty is coming to an end, basically you'll see all of those like last ditch efforts to keep everything how it is. But eventually you get to the point where you realize something is over. And they're trying everything at this point to get everything working again. But at this point, it just, they still can be, they still can be a good team, but they're banged up, they're hurt, they're older, and right now there's legitimate concern of, is this, how much longer is this going to go on for before the Warriors are forced to rebrand? I shouldn't say rebrand, but retool. Yeah,
it's over. It's already been over. And to be honest, like, they're so old, they're going to need to go and make a reservation for the Blue Plate special. That's how old they are.
They're going to be joining AARP.
Yeah, AARP, Blue Plate special, 1 p.m. matinees during the week. I mean, like, Steph Curry is the only guy that is playing out of his mind still. Klay Thompson has regressed in every way, shape, or form. He is not the same guy that they were in the
Yeah,
in the prime.
I remember being sad that they were choosing Draymond over Klay, and I guess I'm kind of eating my words on that one.
Draymond's not doing that well either. I mean, the only reason that they're saying he's doing better is because he's the emotional leader of the team, like keeping the mood up. But that's like saying, oh, well, how many points does a massive emotion of Draymond Green count? Doesn't. Steve Kerr got a bigger contract because of Monty Williams in Detroit. So it's not a great situation. They now have almost $18 million a year on the books for Steve Kerr. It's not good. Like, the Warriors need to start figuring out what they're going to do quick, because now they're stuck with $100 million contract of Draymond Green. I don't know how much is left. I think Klay is a free agent, I think, in the offseason.
Yes.
Steph Curry is still signed.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Paul is probably going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. And basically, this is the Warriors saying, hey, you won 3 titles with us, 3 to 4 titles with us. Here's one last payday. We're paying you for past years.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Speaking of Monty Williams, Pistons involved in a game with the Knicks that ends controversially. So yes, 2 straight weeks where we talk about a Knicks game ending at a controversial call. Whereas last week, however, Nick, we talked about the Knicks losing a game based on a bad ruling by a referee. This week, they actually benefit from such. That little scramble at the end of the Knicks-Pistons game, it was absolutely unbelievable. The Garden was absolutely rocking. But in the L2M, your favorite thing in the whole world, the crew chief admits that they blew the call. And Nick, actually, as a little update to this story, the Knicks protest that they had to pay $25,000 to leak for, it has officially been denied. So my thing is, if you're going to deny the Knicks for what happened during the Houston game, you can't do anything to change the result of this one. The problem isn't so much about that, however, it's the accountability. And I get the L2M is means of transparency, that when officials screw up. But Nick, this is something that has plagued all of sports. You go back to the NFL this season, because the NFL refereeing this season was terrible, and you saw it perfectly on here when we were streaming the Lions Cowboys game. I think the NBA referees have been having one of their worst seasons in years. MMA and UFC, obviously that's different. Athletic commissions appointing judges, but it seems like on a monthly, if not weekly basis, Dan and I are talking about at least one fight with an absolutely controversial scorecard. And yet, there's a commonality, Nick. NBA refs, NFL refs, commission officials. Is there any sort of accountability when they F up? That's my point. And
Hell
that's
no.
what's frustrating.
Hell no, there isn't. Because what are they going to do? Like, the refs don't want to admit they blew a call, even though the crew chief in both Knicks games admitted to blowing the call, getting it wrong. I mean, the call was egregious in the Houston game. Jalen Brunson was straight up. Now, the one thing I would debate is why is Jalen Brunson out at 38, 39 feet getting that close to a shot? There's no need.
That's
Now,
a question for Tibbs, not me.
Like, that's one of those shots where if he makes it, like, you pat them on the back. Like, and don't put the whistle in the referee's hand. That's what Jalen did. The call was wrong, but don't put the whistle, because then when you have to challenge a protest, you're going to lose. In the Pistons game, I don't know what the hell they were looking at with the Pistons player dribbling or trying to control the basketball. Knicks player Davante DiVincenzo falls over, which the Pistons player falls into.
Right.
That should have been a loose ball foul. The Knicks would have lost, because I think that both teams were in the penalty at that point. So it would have been a 3-point game with like 2 seconds left.
But again, my problem is never, it cost the Knicks, or Knicks shouldn't have won, or they shouldn't. It's about accountability. And because, Nick, I think back to that Lions-Cowboys game. Remember how the NFL said, oh, we're not going to allow them any games in the playoffs, which was right. And then the very next week, one of the biggest weeks in the NFL as we were getting into playoff time, they got another national telecast. It's like, how is that truly punishing? Because, you're punishing them for not giving them one of the bigger games when it comes to playoffs and, pressure and pay. But at the same time, you're still putting them on national TV for the whole world to see in the aftermath.
There's really no way, unless the NBA is going to review. Excuse me. They're talking about making final reviews now part of the officiating, which I don't know if you could do that, because that could take a play off the board without making the team challenge. It's not a good look. It's also not a good look that both crew chiefs said, "Oh, I blew it." Essentially, what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's the case, there's no consequence for these crew chiefs at all. What are you going to do? Basically, slap on the wrist?
Yeah, exactly.
So, they can admit it all they want. It's not going to change the game.
All right, jumping over now to the NFL. Tyreek Hill is being sued for battery and assault by an influencer. So the story supposedly goes, and correct me where I'm wrong, Nick, Tyreek Hill was involved with this influencer. The influencer wanted to do some form of content with Hill. And it was some sort of backyard football drill. And no, I'm not talking about the backyard sports games. Apparently, during one of these drills, Hill supposedly and her made contact, and it resulted in a broken leg. And so now this influencer is going after Tyreek Hill.
I mean,
when is Tyreek Hill going to learn?
When is Tyreek Hill going to learn?
I know this is another time he's being sued for some sort of assault charge. I know. The question, because the question I proposed to you during the pre-show meeting was there any sort of hold harm release waiver that the influencer signed? Because if not, that's going to be a problem for Hill, unless if this lawsuit goes through, a jury or a court or judge, whatever, says that, you assumed risk by trying to do a backyard football drill with a NFL player.
She's going to try and say, well, oh, he hit me. He aggressively broke my leg. Is there proof to prove that?
And again, the question is, what was specifically going on? Because again, you're in there with a football player. So now I feel bad getting a broken leg during something like, playing a sport. But at the same time, Nick, unfortunately, major injuries can be a consequence of a sport like football.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there'll be a settlement behind the scenes.
I've got a
really
feeling
know.
there's going to be a settlement.
We'll see.
Here's one I'm really interested in talking about, Nick. Running backs. The running back class for free agency this coming off season could be one for the ages. So there are a number of running backs who are not expected to get the tag. Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler have long since been expected to not get a tag. They will test the free agency market. Tony Pollard will probably be out there as well. Josh Jacobs supposedly is not going to get the tag, but the Raiders will pursue a re-signing, as would the Giants. Now, there's been mixed reports with the Giants. Original reports, and you saw these too, Nick, stated that they were not going to use the tag on Saquon, and they were going to let him test free agency. Now, if that happens, the same report that said the Raiders would pursue a re-signing of Jacobs anyway, also said the Giants would pursue a re-signing of Barkley anyway. But I think Joe Shine said in a recent interview, he's like, we haven't exactly ruled out using a second tag on Barkley.
I mean,
my only question is, would you want at least in the case of Barkley, would you want the drama that happened last season, at least risk having it again? But honestly, this running back class. Now, I know last year you had the depressed running back market, and that still could very well be the case here. I'm just curious how teams would do, how long these guys would stay out there for, what movement there's going to be. Like this is a class that's worth watching right now.
right. I mean, my opinion is, first of all, I wouldn't pay Saquon at all. I'm standing by that.
Even though the tag is only 12 to 14 million, something that he got last season.
No, what I'm saying is either you take the franchise tag or you walk. So if you don't like it, then hold out. You'll lose all your money. You'll lose a year of football. And that's it.
I mean, fair enough. Derrick Henry, do you expect him to get an RB1 position again? Because he still has the talent, but he is older. We've seen a couple of injuries from him. I wouldn't say any to say he's constantly hurt. But still, did he perform last season to the point where you think he gets another RB running back one role, even at his age?
It's tough because say in Atlanta comes calling. Now, obviously they have Drake May, but could they split reps at number one, depending on who's had the hotter hand for games?
You mean you meant Bijan, right?
I mean, excuse me, Bijan Robinson. But he could go to shit teams and be a number one, but I know he doesn't want to do that. I'd be curious to see if, and you're gonna hate this team I'm about to say, but the Cowboys.
Of course. Well, but then what do you think happens with Tony Pollard?
I don't know if they want to pay him, but again, if you're not going to pay him, why would you pay Saquon? That makes no sense. I mean,
right. And if you're the Chargers, because this is something I just rumor mill and water cooler talk with a colleague, that if Saquon hits free agency, the Chargers might be interested. Now, I love Saquon, but I would put Austin Eckler above him in the rankings. And it's like, if you're not going to go after Saquon, maybe for less money, that's why you would go after Saquon and over Eckler. But Austin
I like Eckler.
Eckler, I think, who is the number 2 or number 3 running back in the NFL under McCaffrey. Like, really? You wouldn't go after him again, try to re-sign him?
I like Eckler. Eckler is, even though like he's not going to have the 100-yard game combo like
He produced
McCaffrey
it,
has,
so.
but he will get you the big plays to expand on drives, which is the most important. And then he'll come through with a 100-yard game every so often and score a touchdown or two. Yeah, but he's got to stay healthy. That's the biggest issue. That's been the issue with the running back market. Saquon, Tony
Mhm.
Pollard, who I think had a season-ending injury a couple years ago. Um, who else was out there? Oh god, the Raiders. Josh Jacobs,
Jacobs, yeah.
who was looking for huge money, and what happened? The Raiders said, "F you. You were hurt all year. Like, why would we pay you top running back money? You were hurt." So the running back market is injured. That's the nicest word I could say about it.
Raiders also in the news involving Davante Adams. So Raiders will not trade Davante Adams. Obviously, there's been a lot of drama involving him, the direction that the team is going in, if he may want out. Obviously, there was bad blood after they said no to bringing back Derek Carr, his former teammate, which got traded from the Packers to the Raiders because of Carr and his relationship. So that sparked rumors last off season. Would the Jets get involved to reunite him and his former quarterback in Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers? But I mean, I don't blame the Raiders for doing this. Davante Adams is one of, if not the best receiver in the NFL, and alongside that is Justin Jefferson. And look, I'll say this as a Vikings supporter, Nick. I get the Vikings are coming off of a bad season. The future of the quarterback position is a question. But that team is a hell of a lot worse without Justin Jefferson. And I think you still showed the potential during this season that you still have to give it a shot, regardless of who's back there. So unless you're getting something like 3, 4, 5 first-round pick, like a Herschel Walker style trade deal, which nobody is going to do, it would be foolish for them to trade Justin Jefferson right now.
Yeah.
Especially also because he missed games this year with injury.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. Davante Adams will always be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL as long as he's healthy, but he's always getting hurt or he's getting sick. That was another thing that happened a lot this past season. I think he was way overpaid by the Raiders, and that's the only reason why he's not back with the Packers. Now, I don't know if that's a trickle-down effect, because if Davante Adams is still with the Packers, does Aaron Rodgers leave?
But if I'm not mistaken, one of the reasons Davante had to go was because they had given more money to Aaron Rodgers that they couldn't afford the kind of money Davante wanted.
Well, that was just dumb. I mean, like Aaron Rodgers on the oldest side, and you give him that money, and well, now the Jets are stuck with it. But my point is that Aaron Rodgers was overpaid. These quarterbacks get way overpaid into their late 30s. Look at Peyton Manning with Denver. Look at Russell Wilson with Denver. No one's talking about that.
Well, we'll see what Russell Wilson's future lays, because there's rumors of him coming to G-Town very soon.
Oh God, I hope not.
Especially if he manages to get cut, as is expected by Denver.
I think that would be a big mistake.
That'll be something to watch. Coaching side, Eric Bieniemy, not even in the NFL anymore. Now, obviously, he took the sidestepping job over to Washington. Washington changes owners, and Washington's ownership basically cleans house, firing him, firing Ron Rivera. And Eric Bieniemy doesn't get another job at the NFL. He goes back to college. He's going to be an associate head coach and once again an offensive coordinator, this time at UCLA. And I find it strange, Nick, that there's not this same kind of outpouring of rage as there was a couple of years ago when it comes to
Right.
Bieniemy and head coaching jobs with the NFL. At the same time, it just feels so weird that he's not going to be, because in what the things that happened in Washington, Nick, you can't blame everything on Eric Bieniemy. It was the team around them. Rivera, I like Ron
Rivera
Rivera, but
stinks as a head coach, in my
I
opinion.
like Rivera, but he did not have a good couple of seasons there.
Again, hired for the name, not for the resume. I mean, the team stinks anyway. Also, they traded away all their assets during the
They're
deadline.
basically going under another rebuild.
Who's their quarterback? I mean, what's their pick in the draft?
I want to say they're number 2.
Okay, so they're not going to get Caleb. So whoever's the next quarterback up in the projection
Yeah,
will probably be number 2.
they are number 2. I'm wondering though,
Or could they trade it?
or are they going to go after somebody like Marvin Harrison?
Or could they trade it down, pick one of the other quarterbacks that's a little bit lower,
And get more picks?
and get another first round pick and like a couple second rounders or something in return, which would probably
don't
be
know.
more value.
I don't know. It's a big question that I have with the Commanders. They're a team that needs a lot of help. As far as Eric Bieniemy goes, hopefully UCLA succeeds under him. I don't know what UCLA's record was for 2023. I'm looking that up right now. It was it was an overall 8-5 season, but they only went 4-5 in conference play.
So not good.
Yeah, so not great. Hopefully they bounce back under Eric Bieniemy, make a bowl game, and maybe Eric Bieniemy gets another opportunity at the NFL from there.
I don't know.
Or maybe eventually he becomes a UCLA head coach and he gets a bigger opportunity there.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch. How many times have we heard him say
I know.
as
It
an
just
assistant
feels
head
weird.
coach?
It just feels weird, Nick. Eric Bieniemy is not going to be coaching in the NFL. Nick Saban's not going to be coaching college football. Bill Belichick's not going to be coaching football. And now Peter King just retired.
Yep.
What the heck is going on? Everything that we've grown up with, Nick, it's all falling apart.
We can only have nice things for so long.
And speaking of so long, Jets saying so long to ESPN New York radio, but not because, yes, they had a choice, but the reason they had a choice was because of a clause in a contract. That clause stated, if ESPN New York were to leave the FM airwaves, the Jets had first rights to say adios. And guess what? ESPN announced this week that ESPN New York will be leaving the FM airwaves. They are only going to have their 10:50 a.m. Radio dial position. So the Jets said adios.
Well, they announced it over a year ago. Actually, it's just taking place, I think, on October 31st is going to be the last day of the FM dial. So they go to a rock station, Q1043 FM in New York. Again, this is not a shocker because we've seen NFL teams on classic rock stations. It has to do with the demo.
Right. It has to go with the fact that that's a very big male demographic, 18 to 35. Well, I shouldn't say 8. I don't know if I'd say 18 to 35 because that's more older generations.
I would say the next one up.
Yeah, but still very big male demographic.
I would say like 35 to 60 or 35 to 55 is probably the average NFL targeted demo. I don't know. ESPN New York has a lot of issues. ESPN Radio has a lot of issues.
Yeah, we've
now
talked
no
about
Jets.
now we've talked about them focusing on the digital side. Now, again, maybe a little weird that Jets are going to a classic rock station, going to a station that traditionally plays music. But Nick, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I also feel bad for Knicks and Rangers fans because now at this point you're going to have to listen to AM radio if you want to get the radio broadcast of one of those teams
Or a stream. But yeah. It's gonna bite them in the butt at some point. They're gonna lose all the teams. I don't know when. It's just a matter of how.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do this last story because I know you really want to do this last story.
Okay.
You
So,
wanna- yeah.
so we were going through all our stories, and then I see a story with this headline that says Kevin Garnett says LeBron James is on steroids, and I was stunned. Like, that's the first time I've been stunned by a quote. But you know what? Don't take it from me. I'll play it from KG and Paul Pierce on KG Certified Podcast. That's obviously Kevin Garnett's podcast, which was originally on Showtime Basketball. We don't know where it's going to be for the moment, but listen to KG and Paul Pierce, both former teammates in Boston.
Right. Played on the 2008 championship team.
Right. Listen to this, but I will stress to listen to the last 15 to 20 seconds because that's where the real shocker comes up. Take a listen.
Bronny get a bucket on Bron right now?
Yeah, he can get a bucket on
No
Brown
way.
right
Nope,
now.
nope.
Yeah, he can get a bucket.
No way. Nope.
Nah, he can get a bucket on his
Bron
dad right
averaging
now.
25.
No, I didn't say he ain't. I don't care what he's doing, but he ain't sliding, playing at that all defensive level.
25. Nah. Lord, 25. You still, Lord, he dunking. He's still dunking the ball with.
I'm saying that Bronny can get a bucket on Bron.
I'm saying he can't. One rollout, get a bucket.
3 dribbles.
No way. I'm
Yeah,
talking
he
about.
can get a bucket on him.
No.
Man, come on, that little dude explosive, bro.
He is, but
got
you
Bron.
seen his dad? His dad on that balcony.
Yeah, but
he on that new
he
juice.
ain't
That
sliding like he used to.
Man, bro.
His dad on that Balco. Now, if you're a baseball fan, you know about Balco.
Yeah, but as soon as I heard that, I was like,
That's a major accusation.
I mean, I needed like 5 minutes to process this before we did the show because this is going to sound shocking coming out of my own mouth.
Uh-oh.
No. It's not a rant. It's not a take.
I know.
I'm just saying you're going to be shocked with what I'm going to say.
Still, I'm ready.
I'm on LeBron James' side on this one.
What?
Say that again.
I am on LeBron James' side of this argument.
Can I understand the words that are coming out of your mouth? You, for once, are on LeBron's side.
Yes, I'm on LeBron James' side. We can clip this for the record, too. I am on LeBron James' side for this story.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing a rarity here on Empty the Bench.
So, I hear this absurdity from KG and Paul Pierce. And by the way, KG and Paul Pierce, what is that dumb saying? Like, you shouldn't throw a stone at glass houses.
When you're a house of glass.
Don't throw stones. Like, Paul Pierce should. Where is it? I'm going to have to do it again for the 10 millionth time.
You need to shut the fuck up.
Because if I remember correctly, Paul Pierce was in such turmoil that he was going to strip clubs. He had a weed business.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say? He had a weed business?
Stay off the weed.
And by the way, I'm not making that up. If you go look it up, he had a marijuana business. I don't know if he still has that business.
I think I remember that.
But Paul Pierce at KG, shut up. Like, seriously. Because you're going to throw glass stones at LeBron James. KG, for all the dumb things you've said over the years. I mean, this guy is so, I don't know what the word is, polarizing. That when they put him on the NBA on TNT, do you remember what they had to do with him in the other room?
What did they have to do? I forgot.
They literally put a box with a dump button next to it in the room. Do you because remember he was on the broadcast?
Yeah, and they
And
actually
literally,
had to be prepared for him to say
and
stuff.
they basically told KG, look, hit the dump button if you're going to say something. Even though that's probably the dumbest thing they've ever done. Because, and I don't understand this either. He didn't hit the dump button, and some words got through.
Yeah, well,
So they
I
were
mean,
trusting him to hit the dump button.
yeah, well, they shouldn't have trusted him in the first place on that one.
But to say LeBron is on Balco on steroids.
Like come on. Like I remember, Nick, when Skip and Stephen A had this argument. It was 2012. Derek Jeter was having a resurgence of a year at his older age.
It was
And
towards the end
Skip-
of his career. Yeah.
Right. And Skip had the nerve to basically insinuate Jeter was on the juice. And Stephen A basically ripped him a new one.
Right. But here's the difference. DJ was a class act for the most part until after his career when he did some other things. But he was a class act as a baseball player, as a on the field. LeBron James is not 100% a class act by any means. That one I won't come up on.
At the same time, Nick, some of the stuff he did in the later portions of his career, like, come on. Like, really, you haven't gotten experience enough with the talent of LeBron James that you're going to make this accusation?
I mean, it's not even like it's a former player. Usually you get the stupidity of a current player that'll say someone is on steroids. This is too far. This is a former player and a current player.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You know what Kevin Garnett thinks of this, Nick? You want to know what he thinks?
What? I didn't hear it. Oh, what was that?
It was him saying anything is possible.
Oh, that. Yeah. After the 08 victory. Yeah.
Anything is possible.
Yeah. But you know what? And like, I was a respect person for KG. It's over, man. I don't respect KG anymore. And I never thought I'd say this over a LeBron James quote.
I seriously, like, it's definitely a ridiculous accusation. I'm just a little shell-shocked that we have Nick Morgasen actually giving LeBron James a support.
You have to be careful with these allegations, too, when you make them.
I know.
Because LeBron could basically turn around and say, hey, you slandered me, and I'm taking you to court. I don't know if that lawsuit would stand by any means, but
I was gonna say I don't think LeBron would do anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised, Nick, if before this episode airs or as it's airing or a little after it airs, LeBron claps back a little bit.
LeBron always claps back. That's kind of what he does now. Well, or he'll just go and grab a glass of red wine and just laugh it off.
Well, you know what? I think we're going to get out of here and we're going to get some glass of red wine ourselves because that is going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter, at ETB Sports. Do the same for the network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Make sure to check out our audio-only platforms, Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so much more. If you are on those platforms, we thank you so much. Don't forget to go to our YouTube home, our YouTube base, youtube.com/ETB Network, as we continue to climb the 700 subscribers. ETBpodcast.com, more content, more information about the network, as well as blogs from some of our contributors. Once again, shout out to WolfSpreads, the expanded partnership with the Empty the Bench Network. Check them out. 2,000 fantasy dollars. Little competitive fantasy gambling with some of your friends. Create it and see who can do better when it comes to fantasy betting games like NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, college sports, and more. And don't forget to check out Nick and myself on our personal social medias at Morgasen Radio, at Thomas J. Albano. I think that's going to do it. So that is going to do it for us. That's going to do it for the month of February as we are about to enter March. So for us here at Empty the Bench for episode 222, I'm Tom Albano. That's Nick Morgasen, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everyone.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.